A very good morning to you. Welcome to the Morning Brief right here on Channels Television. It's the 16th day in the month of July, and I'm Jeffrey Ozama. Guys, good morning.
Well, it's the perfect morning starter, and we're live here from our global headquarters here in Lagos. I'm Bukola Koka.
Kelly Egiga, thank you indeed for joining us on the program. Everyone, wherever you're watching from around the world, trying to have breakfast, on the move. We know how life could be. Take things easy. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. So, exactly what are we tracking this morning? I am looking for literally sport for choice as to exactly what is playing out. So, first off, I think we haven't spoken about this issue that happened in the death of the Habila lady, Mary Habila, that passed at the residence, we understand, of the Honorable Minister of Works, Mr. Dave Umahi, who, as a matter of fact, had also made his own statement concerning that incident, and he talked about people publishing things that are not accurate. So what do we know about the Habila lady? We understand that she is a physiotherapist, works with the University Teaching Hospital named after Dave Umahi in Ebonyi State, but she was on secondment to the Ministry of Works. Perhaps that simply means deployed to the Ministry of Works, and I think she stays in the residence, if I understand what they were saying, of the Minister of Works in Ebonyi State as a physiotherapist, I think catering for physiotherapeutic need of perhaps the minister and others, I wouldn't know exactly. But the big story is that the people one day woke up and realized that something had happened. They broke into her house, into the room where she was living in the residence, I think in the quarters, and then when they broke in, they saw that she had passed. Some are reporting there was blood on her mouth, just so many, stories around it. However, while she was taken to the hospital, she was already dead by the time she was taken to the hospital. So police has also released a statement concerning that. So maybe we'll take a listen to the minister, but before we take a listen to the minister, let's tell you what the police had reported as shared with us by our correspondent. It said in the statement by, let me be sure of the name of the SP Joshua Okandu, Public Relations Officer of Ebonyi State Police Command in Abakaliki. It said the preliminary findings indicate that the deceased and a colleague formed part of a medical team attached to the Honorable Minister, Engineer Dave Umahi, and had accompanied him to his hometown in Uburu, where she died in a room within the compound of his residence. The commander has since commenced a comprehensive investigations and all of that. The family is just moving to the next other paragraph. The family of the deceased has, however, claimed that they do not want any autopsy performed on their daughter. Now, that raises a lot of curiosity for anyone. If your child died under that circumstance, why don't you want autopsy to be performed to ascertain the cause of death? So these are so many questions, and guys, what do you make of this story?
Well, I think it's really devastating, especially for the family. I am amazed and surprised and shocked why they may not want an autopsy to be conducted on their daughter, who has sadly passed. But could it be that they do not have faith in the process? They do not, and that's why perhaps the likes of the ADC are also calling for an independent probe or investigation. So perhaps that could be the concern for the family here. But there are so many narratives out there. People are wondering why all of this was surrounded in secrecy and all of that. And then one would just wonder, that role, the physician to the minister, I'm not sure where the minister stays exactly. Is he resident in Ebonyi State, or is he resident in Abuja? Did she accompany him from Abuja to Ebonyi, Abakaliki? So one really wonders exactly what her role was. Yes, she was a physician, we know, but I think in the coming days and weeks, Nigerians will want to perhaps have a clearer explanation about her role and just how she died. I think from what the minister reported, the family were kind of concerned about her life or safety, and that's why they had to break into her room, according to what the minister said, or has been reported that he said. So it will be interesting what this investigation would would look like, or I mean, eventually if there's one. But that autopsy, I think we need to conduct it, and maybe indeed have an independent autopsy conducted, not that by maybe a government hospital. But let's take a listen to the minister, and then we'll get to hear Bukola's thoughts.
We had very unfortunate incident that also happened. And you can see these so-called freedom fighters are just very terrible. And when you use the death of somebody else to play politics, you know, the darkest and hottest part of the hair is reserved for you. You know, we had an unfortunate sudden death of, you know, one of the workers of Federal University Teaching Hospital, Uburu, and was seconded to me. That's a nurse who checks my vital signs, you know, every day. And she's been with me for 3 years. And they also live in the same compound with other workers at the guest house in Asokoro, you know, where I stay. And there's somebody whose hair is reserved for is given, you know, as if wrong gears were transported to, you know, our residence. And that's the impression, you know, the person, you know, the lawyers have been briefed, and they will take on the people that are evil and say they're fighting for the freedom of the country. Because if you intentionally did it, the death of the young lady will be far, far better than yours. Because, you know, everybody is called at the time of God. So that lady, you know, was a worker of Federal University Teaching Hospital. That lady was second to the ministry. The second lady is also a physiotherapist from Benue State, seconded also to the ministry, a worker in Federal, you know, Teaching Hospital. And so it's unfortunate that she passed on. And the parents are already here and are going to talk to the press. They have threatened to take the writers to, you know, court. And, you know, when people say that content curators that are fighting, they're evil. They're just using it to collect money from people. And, you know, when my Bible tells me that it got in shall diminish. So when you use the death of people to curate content and deceive people, it means your time is up. And so it shall be. So, and that lady was very nice person. The parents are already in a boil, and tomorrow they will be seen. So I ordered that there must be autopsy. But you know the law, the parents have to admit. And if they say no, they have to swear affidavit to say no, we don't want autopsy. And so if they want autopsy, they need to also indicate that. The family reported to the hospital when they noticed this. The family also reported to the police. So where is the secrecy that every people were reporting? Where is the secrecy? You know, the same moment it was discovered, her door was broken to see that she was, you know, she had passed on. And so they invited the, you know, the doctors, you know, and the doctors came, did everything to revive her, but it wasn't possible. And then they now, you know, took her to the clinic and they invited the police. So where is the secrecy in it? If not that people are evil, and so shall evil follow them. That is where we are. I also saw where somebody say you are denying your worker. You know, so every policeman, you know, must be known by the IG of police. So all the people that worked as a bubago, you know, so if the people that are writing that the so-called person that was arrested for kidnapping is Dave Umahi's right-hand man, can they picture?
Well, the Minister of Works and Infrastructure there, Mr. Dave Umahi, speaking on the death of, unfortunate death of the nurse who worked in his residence, Mary Habila. Well, candid words there, but it throws up a lot of more questions, especially about, you know, the term secondment that the minister, you know, uses in his explanation. We might also, beyond asking the family why they wouldn't want to conduct an autopsy, we would also need to ask the federal institution in Obulu how, you know, secondment works in their own institution. Do they second officials to take up residency along with their assignment in the home of their clients, because it raises more questions about the circumstances surrounding the death of this woman. Perhaps it was, we shouldn't reach conclusions, but that's a question right there, begging for answer. What was the nature of her assignment? Why did she have to take up residence in the minister's home? How far was the distance from her house? And then what culture really would, be practiced by people that would, not allow an autopsy to be conducted, following the curious death of a family member. So is the truth not more important than, the nature of the culture that they practice? Very, very important question there would require the family members to answer that at this particular point in time. Would also want to know, perhaps, the health status of this particular young lady. But our prayers and our thoughts are with the family of Miss Mary Habila following this unfortunate incident.
Yeah, just in addition, so I think the state will need to take some level of responsibility, because the person who is involved, when I say take responsibility, see how they can talk to the family, because I'm seeing that the police in their statement, they say the command has since commenced, yes, the part I read, the command nonetheless, when the family say they don't want autopsy performed, in the statement of the police said the command nonetheless consider the examination necessary given the sensitive nature of the case and the imperative of establishing the true cause of death. What we want to know, there are reports that she was found naked. Was that true? Blood on her mouth, is that true? Some, stings on her face, is that true? So all of this has to be unraveled, because this is within the premises of a politician. So it arouses a lot of interest, a lot of questions. So all of these must be answered, because that is what whoever took her to the hospital has to establish, the medical people have to establish, the police have to establish. So maybe we'll just wait and see how this plays out. But the family, we can't advise them. But I don't know what the law says. If there's public interest in the passing of someone who was seconded to the Ministry of Works, and this time a politician, and the person died in his residence, I do not know what the law says as to how far they can go against the will of the parents. So the lawyers will be able to break that down. But we have to get to the root of this to find out exactly what happened, because it's going to raise a lot of questions. People are beginning to talk about the minister again. Remember the engineers, Nolan engineer, they talk about that, those allegations about those 5 engineers. So he needs to clear his name. Yeah. And I agree with him that
don't forget
he has
the woman
ordered, yes,
who also complained of non-payment,
yes,
who went back and forth over her account.
Umar has been under too many, this is like the third controversy the second one, because the woman who said she did a job, then that's where we heard about the Nolan, is it Nelan, one engineering company, 5 engineers got missing, or we can't find, they say they can't find them to today as alleged, and then this. So it's important that I agree with him that autopsy has to be carried out, and whatever has to be done to maybe convince the parents, if the law says if they agree, it can be done. If they don't agree, it won't, because there's nothing you can do against the law. So guys, what else are we tracking?
Yeah, so, I mean, the World Cup is here. Argentina.
Something to lighten the mood, right?
Yeah. Argentina up against Spain. That's the finals we're looking forward to. But yesterday, England, just when we thought perhaps they were going to be at the finals, they went 1-0 up, and trust the English fans were all and about, making noise, jubilating. And then King Messi and his team, who know how to come from behind, again, struck. There's a narrative that, this is Messi's final World Cup, and then they'll play Spain, and then Messi is going to hand over, pass the baton or something. So Lamine Yamal, that's what some pundits are, insinuating and all of that. But you know what? We'll watch and see how that final is going to play out. But I mean, I think it was, I feel for England. They have had to go through a lot. I thought perhaps they'd have made it to the finals of this tournaments, because they have all of the players, from the attack to the midfield to the defenders, you name it. The bench is a solid bench as well. These guys play at the highest level of football, and then it does get to crumble.
Well, for me, maybe in just 30 seconds, England, the English team, England itself, they need to stop hype and breed talent. They talk a lot and they hype too much. They don't have as much talent as they claim they do, because yesterday was a total disaster. I watched that match, I was furious. They had this, because I was rooting for England that between 1966 to 2026, 60 years, this should be the time when they should lift this trophy and brag as they want. But England was 1 goal up at the second half, and then I don't know what happened to the coach. You are playing against Argentina that can come from 2-0 down and win within regular time. You have a Messi, you have a Martinez, you have all of these guys, and then you pushed back to defend. You want to defend the goal for 25 to 30 minutes against Argentina. It was at that point that Tuchel was, in fact, as he's landing the airport in England, they should just tell him, don't bother coming, go home from there. Because
Jeffrey.
No.
After getting the team all the way to the semi-final.
No. It's
oh, there goes the typical Nigerian football analyst.
No, it's
after getting the team all the way to the semi-final.
Bukola.
If a Nigerian coach got the Super Eagles all the way to even the quarterfinal at the World Cup.
That is Nigeria.
That's Nigeria.
Oh,
we're talking about England.
So there are different standards.
Of course, there are different standards.
I'm sorry, but they had a chance to give it a better fight. I'm saying the Argentine team you're playing against can come from 2 goals down or 1 goal down and win within regular time. There is a Messi. I can go on and on. The people that can do damage at half opportunity, clinical finishing, and then you decided to say you will hold on to the pressure on your goal. If not the goalkeeper, it would have been worse. For 30 minutes, you know you have already lost. So Tuchel landing at the airport said, thank you for your service. For me, I'll be going home.
I disagree.
Because it's technical. No.
There may have been a lot of bragging, prior to the game, and I did hear the English coach, speaking. And perhaps that is, the typical psychological approach to wanting to win a game. But kudos to whatever effort that they were able to make. And I particularly want to say kudos to Lionel Messi. There was so much talk about him being 39-year-old, and I was wondering if age was a crutch or an asset. And he has proven that it is an asset, after connecting the winning goal.
I'm now rooting for Spain. We'll be back after this. Stay with us.
Welcome back. So let's bring in our guest, Dr. Ambrose Igboke, the Chairman Guild of Public Affairs Analysts of Nigeria, Enugu State Chapter. He joins us virtually this morning. Dr. Igboke, so who was it for you, the Argentines or the 3 Lions during yesterday's semi-final match?
Well, from the point of view of empathy, I wanted England to win it because, come on, 60 years. It's a long time, so I was rooting for them actually. And when they scored the first goal, I was very ecstatic. I don't like the idea of a country, out of all the countries in the world, one particular country taking the World Cup back to back. It's too much of a gift. So I didn't want Argentina to win based on that. And I was rooting for England. But again, just as Geoffrey said, there was a tactical error, Martin at the back just for 30 minutes. Just when you still had much as 30 minutes, and something snapped, of course. When Argentina was probing, when they were blocking, they started looping the ball and during area balls, and that was able to give them the victory. It's a shame that England, didn't have good tactics.
All right. We hope that got through, but that was biting. Let's get to the papers now as we begin with New Telegraph newspaper this morning. New Telegraph focuses on a subject that has been topical in the last 2 weeks. State police, governors won't solely appoint police commissioners. That assurance is coming from Abbas. There are some writers here. Says federal police will handle federal crimes. State police, ordinary law. Bamidele pushes for first-line charge funding, warns against abuse, says financial autonomy key to insulating state police from interference. Is there anything new that has, come through from this particular round of the conversation that we haven't heard before? And against that backdrop, what should we be emphasizing as this gradually becomes a reality?
Yeah, if they want state police, I think they should just go for state police. This is not convenient for me to say that governors should not be solely responsible. If they still want to maintain the federal police structure where the president appoints the IG, and by extension the commissioners of police through the IG, they should maintain it and not waste our time. But if there is going to be state police, the state governor should be fully responsible for appointing his commissioner, so that he can be fully responsible for giving directives, fully responsible for the security in the state, being responsible for the success, and being responsible for the failures of security in the state. The federal police, I don't know why we are talking about state police, and some people are still trying to ensure that federal police is in control of the state police somehow. It shouldn't be. And the state governors should make sure that their representatives of the National Assembly do not support anything that will undermine their collective authority when it comes to appointment of state police commissioners. The federal police should maintain federal crimes, as they have said, and then if you are saying that the federal government should have will also be part of appointing the state commissioners of police, this federal government, are they going to be part of funding of state police? So you cannot want to hold authority and you don't have the responsibility of funding. So I think we should not confuse ourselves. The NGF, the Nigeria Governors Forum, should make decisive statements and urge their representatives across the state to reject the idea that the federal government should still have a hand in the appointment of a state police commissioner. That will make a nonsense of the whole thing we are trying to get done in terms of state police. So as it stands, state governors should appoint state commissioners of police. Federal should restrict their job to the federal. They should not put their hands in terms of trying to appoint state commissioners of police. Otherwise, we'll go back to where we originally were, so that we don't just have motion and don't have movement.
Well, it will be interesting to see, Dr. Igboke, how the coming weeks and months will play out in terms of this state policing, because, I mean, yesterday we got the report that the House of Reps had adopted the proposal by Mr. President. We are yet to see perhaps what the differences are in that proposal between what Mr. President is suggesting or proposing and what the House of Reps is also proposing. But let's take a look at this Nigeria this morning. Dr. Igboke leads with something else. Malami loses 48 out of 57 properties to federal government. A court grants final forfeiture in EFCC suit, finds 212 billion naira assets illegally acquired. Just how has the mighty fallen, Dr. Igboke?
Well, not how the mighty, but what came to my mind was not how the mighty has fallen, is how deep we have been entrenched, how in corruption, how far down we are falling in ethical behavior in countries among public office holders. For a senior advocate of Nigeria, a lawyer for that matter, and the Attorney General of the country to have this kind of baggage. He was not even afraid. I was as a sitting governor, as a sitting minister of the Federal Republic. He just engaged in this wanton looting. I don't know where these people think.
Of the Guardian newspaper as well, I'd like us to begin from Senate rejects PFIPC probe as Atiku slams FG over 6.44 billion World Cup budget. Bottom left of the Guardian newspaper, Senate rejects PFIPC probe as Atiku slams FG over 6.44 billion World Cup budget. So we may not be at the World Cup, Dr. Igboke, but guess what? The government deemed it fit for us to have a budget of 6.44 billion naira.
Let me make an excuse for the government. By the time the budget was still being prepared, maybe early last year or middle of last year, we were still playing the qualification matches round. So I think that budget may be predicated on the fact that we may qualify, that we will qualify. And so the budget was put because we won't wait to be qualified before we start budgeting. So it was an anticipatory provision, budgetary provision. Having said that, we were sure that we are not going for the World Cup ever since some months. So the question what Nigerians should do is to track that budget, whether it was reformed, whether it was removed, discounted, or whether it was now pushed to another ministry, or whether it was now returned back, returned to the central bank. But we should monitor that such money is not disbursed at all, because if it is, then it will be completely out of line. But again, well, sometimes they may tell you that they are sending people to the World Cup maybe to learn the tactics of Lionel Messi, or to know how coaches work. Maybe we have had flimsy excuses like that in the past, where entourage just move and do nothing. But this one is a very critical issue. An anticipatory budgetary allocation that was made because we thought we might qualify for the World Cup. And now that we didn't qualify, that budgetary allocation should be struck out and then maybe reassigned to our health sector is suffering, even sports development is suffering. That thing can be able to build our league. That thing can be able to put playing pitches all around the country for in every local government for young lads to be able to practice football. Football is no longer just a leisure or a hobby. The football is now an international business where a lot of forex come into the countries. So we should treat football as a business and be able to have homegrown football, just like many countries all over the world. Brazil, Argentina, a lot of countries in Europe, they export football talents, and they get a lot of money in return in terms of forex. So it's left for the CSOs, the media, and everybody to keep on tracking that money to see that it does not vanish into thin air.
All right, just as we wind down, let's just stay with the Guardian. You just speak to that particular main story on the Guardian newspaper. Nomination of candidates roll over INEC's deadline compliance as parties seek further extension. What do you make of it?
I don't know in the first instance why INEC gave some kind of impossible deadlines. Many people cried against it that that these timelines are too tight. Why can't you relax it a bit? And INEC was hell bent, making political parties run helter-skelter. But these things are supposed to take time. INEC, when you were sitting there was a lot of time. The National Assembly sat there. They didn't bring out an electoral law that would guide the 2027 polls until this year. And then INEC now came with impossible timetables and the rest. I think this is unfair on the political parties. It didn't give them enough time to be able to, put themselves together, especially political parties that went into merger, that went into takeovers, that went into alliances. They didn't give them time to settle, and this is unfair. So INEC, with this kind of behavior, is showing that it's not hands-on, or it's not being pragmatic about its own directives and its own plans. They should, if it means to extend this thing, extend it enough time to give the political parties enough time in accordance with the extant rules of the Electoral Act, and let them be able to have the opportunity to bring their candidates. This one will keep on, removing names from portal. You don't know which one will enter the portal. I don't know when last we had this kind of skirmishes where primaries are done and then you wait for the National Working Committee to clear it, and then names of people who won at the local level are substituted. I can't seem to understand whether we're going around in circles indeed.
Perhaps we should do a roll call of all the litigation cases that bother on political parties and find out where exactly we are as it relates to the 2027 elections. But that would be a fine place to anchor, Dr. Igboke. Dr. Ambrose Igboke is the Chairman, Guild of Public Affairs Analysts of Nigeria, Enugu State Chapter. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me on the show.
Well, our outlook is more expansive today as we'll touch on the economy as well as, other issues. So stay with us. We'll be right back with our first conversation after this break. Join us again.
Welcome back. Let's bring in our guest, Mr. Jide Ojo. He's a political and public affairs analyst. He joins us virtually. Mr. Ojo, thank you for coming on the program. If you can help us unmute your device, sir. Mr. Ojo, can you hear us? Oh dear. So, can you hear us now?
I'm hearing you.
All right, fantastic. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
My pleasure.
So let's begin with what the Guardian is leading. In fact, I'm going to ask two questions in one because of time. So you binge through both of them as quickly as you can. And that has to do with Guardian reporting that, you know, some political parties are still seeking extension to the deadline provided by INEC for the submission of nominated candidates for their parties ahead of the election. So is this part of the fears that political parties had, or this is just political parties not being able to do the homework that is necessary in preparing for election? That's question number one. Question number two, I'm looking at the Electoral Act. If I remember correctly, the spending limit for presidential candidates in any election is about 10 billion naira. And I don't think that is realistic. If a presidential candidate spends 10 billion, I don't know whether he wants to run for House of Assembly or National Assembly, because if you pay, say, 30,000 to each of your polling unit agents in 176,000 polling units across the country, in excess of that, that's already 5 billion gone. So why I brought out that data is to the effect that, are we being realistic in our legislation to be able to manage our electoral process properly? So first, the deadline issue. Second, legislation to manage the electoral process so we can probe spendings. Mr. Ojo?
There are a couple of cases in courts, one by Youth Party and then the other by the SDP, where they are challenging INEC's timeline and schedule of activities, because according to them, it's actually put them under intense pressure. So for that singular reason, they decided that they were going to, and they got favorable judgment from the court. INEC has, however, challenged those rulings, those two Federal High Court judgments, one filed by the Youth Party, the other by SDP. INEC said it is statutorily mandated to give timetable and schedule of activities, and that sometimes people don't see the bigger picture. That is a chain of events, and you need to connect the dots if you are going to achieve. Like many people have argued, why do we have to cut off voter registration perhaps 6 months to election? Because you need to process the permanent voters card. So it's not like debit card you collect in the bank. So INEC has magnanimously extended the submission of nomination for National Assembly and presidential candidate from 11th to 14th. I'm aware that INEC actually trained representative of political parties on how to upload these particulars. Perhaps what they have faced is the glitches with telecoms. You can see me, even only myself and you, we are having glitches about sound. And that has been, I'm using, I don't want to advertise their products, I'm paying heavily for internet subscription, FiberX, and yet the quality I get is suboptimal. This may be the challenge that the political parties are facing in uploading, because they need internet to upload. So if the internet is having a lot of downtime, definitely they will find it extremely difficult to upload, because I don't think uploading one presidential aspirant and 360 House of Reps position and 109 senatorial positions should be that challenging, even with the extension. But by and large, I think IPAC will speak to that, and maybe it's something INEC can also look into. But we must understand that there have to be deadlines for some of these things, because there are timelines set by the Constitution as well as the Electoral Act. Now, coming back to the issue of campaign finance ceiling, this is one issue I weighed in on in my column in The Punch yesterday. where I was looking at the nexus between political finance and corruption in governance. As you discuss the issue of Malami SAN, how many of us know that Malami is contesting to be governor of Kebbi State? Even Uche Oga, the one that was sacked for forgery, was trying to be governor in Enugu under PDP. Now, you need truckloads of resources to contest for election in Nigeria. You cited the 10 billion. So many people who are uninformed, even that 10 billion is too much. But it's just a ceiling. It doesn't mean you have to spend up to that. But the reality, which I actually drew attention to in my column yesterday, is that when you look at the kind of spending you do contesting election in Nigeria, it's not for the faint-hearted. It's not for people who are living day by day. It's for people with deep pocket, and that's where some of them go to godfathers. People like Chris Ngige, who have to go to Chris Uba in Anambra State to bankroll his election, because it's gargantuan. Look at, I cited the example of Okoyemi Bamidele, this Ekiti election that was held June 20 last year. Around 2024, during the commissioning of one of his constituency projects, Okoyemi Bamidele Senate leader said many of his allies were pressurizing him to go and contest for governorship of Ekiti. He said he is not contesting because 2 years to the time of the election, you become an employer of labor. People start gathering in your house, demanding of you, oh, Your Excellency, as if you have won the election. My children's school fees, I need to go to Mecca, I want to go to Jerusalem, my mother is sick, and all of that. And you have to take care of that. That's 2 years to election. You start spending heavily. Then the party nomination time will come. For APC, governorship form is 50 million, presidential form is 100 million. People like me who live day by day, can I afford that? It's impossible. And then you buy the nomination form. Before the date of the primary, you have to do a lot of mobilization, lobby, logistics, and all of that. A lot happens under the water. In terms of people you have to go and see, party leaders you take cola to, and you know cola, what I mean by cola. Those who achieved consensus in this just concluded primary didn't just get the consensus within the party to have to pave way for you so that the road will be smoothing. And that comes at a very huge cost. Then you move from that. You have to now look at what the campaign ceiling is. Now, there is 5 months of campaign, 150 days rather, of campaign that you have to run. And that's why even for the governorship, you will not see much in terms of campaign until the last 6 weeks or 4 weeks to the election, because the cost is just so huge. And then you have to set up campaign office. Sometimes, as I painted the picture, for presidential candidates like Peter Obi, like Atiku Abubakar and President Tinubu, you have to set up campaign offices in all the 36 states, sometimes up to local government offices. Do you know what it means to run those offices? You have to employ people to run it. You have to buy operational vehicles. You have to pay for internet. You have to also give them money to do road shows, to do organized rallies. Then you come to paying for the polling agent on election day. Then what about the cost of litigation? The election matter you are taking to court, you have to pay senior lawyers to go and defend your mandate. That's the mandate that you are going to be on the ticket. Then after the election, when you are victorious, you are still dragged to the same tribunal for upward of 300 days if you are contesting for governorship election. 180 days at the court or at the tribunal, 60 days at the court, and 60 days at the Supreme Court. That is humongous.
I totally agree with you, Mr. Ojo, and fantastic analysis there, because that paints a picture about just how we've monetized our electoral process and elections in this part of the world. So perhaps if you do not have monies, if you're not rich or wealthy, or you have someone who bankrolls you, you absolutely have no business in politics. That's what it's looking like. And I'm just wondering, perhaps I like the scenario you've painted about parties and lane structures. It was a big deal in the last election, especially for the LP candidates, Mr. Peter Obi, who is now of the NDC. The fact that it looked like, it was a fantastic party, had a lot of followership on social media and all of that around the world, but sort of there was that question as to the party didn't have structure. So I'm wondering, if you look at Mr. Peter Obi, for instance, do you think the NDC and Mr. Peter Obi have learnt their lessons and they're putting in place such structures? And then I'm also going to ask you just how you think that the APC retaining the Muslim ticket, how it's going to play out at the polls in 2027.
So he has learned his lesson. There is no lesson to learn. If you don't have money, hide your face. That is just the name of the game. Politics, in politics globally, even in US, that's why they do crowdfunding. Whether NDC has been able to have structure, I doubt whether they have robust structure. Not that they don't have structure, because I know they rush through having congresses and the convention in April. That was shortly before the commencement of the party primary. So those structures, I don't know how robust they are, whether they are well resourced, whether the state ward executive are in place, the local government executive are in place, the state executive are in place, the zonal executives are in place, and then the national working committee. This is a whole lot of bureaucracy that needs to be funded. And sometimes, if you don't fund these structures well, they are going to be hijacked by your opponents who will pay them to work for them. So that is one. The other point you raised, and I've granted several media interviews about the Muslim ticket. People should not be too emotional about these things. The president has done the best for his pathway to victory. One, he has weighed the chances of his opponent. Looking at Peter Obi, looking at Atiku Abubakar, and he has seen with his own think tank, which I believe he has set up privately, advising him that, look, I don't need to change this ticket because, one, he has 31 governors in his camp. Two, the whole idea of Islamization, if it hasn't happened in 3 years, will not most unlikely happen. Number three is also that for political inclusion, he has decided to go for somebody from the Northeast, which is one of the zones that have been kind of marginalization since the time of Tafawa Balewa. Nobody from the Northeast has been in that number one position. So, and then the most important point to note is that while this may hurt the president a bit in terms of maybe losing votes in some minority Christian areas of the Northeast and Northwest, he is going to gain maximally from the Muslim population who are in the majority in northern Nigeria. So if you win 80 and lose 20, it's a big win for you. So there will still be those who will not vote for the president because of Muslim ticket. But believe you me, for instance, in Lagos, it will not matter whether it's Muslim, as it did matter in 2020, because that time the Christian Association of Nigeria, the Pentecostal Fellowship of Nigeria were all over the churches saying, oh, don't vote for this man, he wants to Islamize Nigeria, where should we have? But that will not sell again, because now we have seen that this man has a wife who is a redeemed pastor and has never converted her to Islam. This man, in fact, the North, who are even who voted for the Muslim ticket, were even thinking that they didn't get a fair deal under his presidency. So when you look at the fact that the rank of the opposition is already fragmented, that is a plus for him. Then he has something to campaign on. Whatever modest achievements he has achieved in 3 years, other candidates are going to be campaigning on promissory notes. I will do this, I will do that. But the president can say, I've done this number of infrastructural developments. I've been able to reduce this in the economy, insecurity. This is how we are tackling it. And so whether believe him or not is secondary, but at least he has something to campaign on. So the whole emotion of a Muslim, and I've cited several examples in Ekiti State since 1999. If my memory serves me right, the governors and deputy governors have been Christian. In Ondo State, for most part, under Mimiko, he is a Christian, and his deputy was also a Christian. In even current during the time of Rotimi Akede, the USAN, Aketi, he is a Christian. His deputies, his two deputies, Agbola Ajayi and Lucky Ayedatiwa, who is now a governor, are both Christians. So if you can have Christian in places like Ondo State that have significant Muslim population, in Ekiti State that have significant Muslim population, and even in Osun State, there have been some governors in Osun who also run on, I think Adeleke and his deputy are both Christians. Just the same way as Oyinlola and Olushola Obada are both Christians. Then you come to Kaduna State. Under Erufa, Kaduna decided to pick a woman and a Muslim from southern Kaduna, which is predominantly Christian, and they won. In fact, I think it's that same lady that is now the deputy governor to Ubasani. So sometimes we need to move away from this primordial sentiments. I do know that his political producers will argue wrongly and say, oh, it's not sensitive to our religious sensibilities. But what does that do for you? Does it bring food to your table? When we had a vice president that is a Christian, for the 8 years that Professor Yemi Osinbajo was deputy governor and vice president to Muhammadu Buhari, what was his impact in that presidency? What impact did he make? Did he help the Christian community different from the Muslim community? It's about governance. What Nigerians want is good governance, not really about whether it's a Muslim or even a pagan that is pretending to be a Christian or Muslim.
Now let's look at perhaps why there isn't food on the table, and permit me to return to your thought-provoking piece on campaign finances and its nexus with corruption. In that piece, you quote the the figure of election nomination forms of political parties, and there are 100 million for presidential. There is 60 million depending on the political party. I believe ADC is charging 90, 60, 30 in that order. And when you get to NDC, is a bit cheaper, 30, 10, with concessions for those who win to now purchase the nomination forms. And I'm thinking that perhaps we should contextualize it and see that if, for instance, APC has the predominant number in the National Assembly, maybe 90 senators, 300 House of Representative members, and multiply that by the number of, by the amount of nomination and expression of interest forms that they're to pay. So we're possibly looking at billions of naira domiciled in the APC's, account books as we speak at the moment. Now, I'd like you to compare that with the current levels of hunger and poverty that we currently have, and with reports that a ministry's capital budget is being delayed, and they've only got 36 million naira in a particular year. What are your thoughts on this seeming contradiction between our politics and our economic reality?
Thank you, Bukola. This is quite unfortunate, and let me also explain certain things to us. Yes, there are reasons for charging high nomination fees. And I will quote former national chairman of ADC, who is now a chieftain of ADC, Chief John Odige. He said there are reasons why they charge high nomination fee. One, they want to keep away people who are on serious aspirants. People just want to plug the wheel, those who want to just use it as a bargaining chip to make money. Number two is also to enable, in fact, the word is used was to separate the men from the boys, that they need to charge that high to separate men from boys. But for us as civil society and somebody working in this space, we will not agree with him that you need to separate boys because we are driving for political inclusion. But that is one argument. Number two is also they are looking at resources to run the office. Unfortunately, for many parties, particularly if you are not in government, to run party offices across the country is not easy. People think the members of the National Working Committee or State Working Committee are the only people that run political offices. There is a huge bureaucracy. If you have ever been to the APC National Secretariat, there are admin staff with directors, with directorates that have to be paid every month. They run bills. In fact, I think when Ganduje gave, when he was leaving the chairmanship of the party, I think their convention in 2024 or 2025, he said they bought the current party secretariat for several billions of naira. I can't remember the exact one. And now they are trying to build their party secretariat. Don't forget that even for 16 years of PDP, they never had a permanent structure for their own. I think they are still paying rent on the Wadata Plaza. So, and that doesn't come cheap. So, some of the money they made from sales of nomination and expression of interest for is what they used to run party during the post-election period. Because party members are not paying dues. They are simply not paying dues. When I'm a researcher and I'm an expert in political finance, I've done research even this last year when we went around some parties and we are encouraging them to charge reasonable membership fees. One of the parties told us that their membership fee is 300 naira. And when they wanted to increase it to 1,000 per month, 1,000 naira per month, that the party members resisted. And I was asking myself, how much is 300 naira that you cannot pay? You are now saying that if they take it to 1,000 naira, so that's a huge challenge. So how does party structures get funded? That's where political barons come in. People will bankroll the payment of salaries, allowances, and running costs of the parties. And then they want to determine what goes on within the party. I don't want to mention names. People who have come out so strongly and with their foot just to say, I'm the one running this party, and I have to have a say in how the party is run and who gets what within the party. I don't want to mention it, but people know who has done that over the years, using his own resources to run party. So then cross over to the other angle of your question about capital budget not being released. It is so unfortunate. It is very unfortunate because that's the capital vote is what impacts on the citizenry. When you build the structures, you pay for services. I learned a lot of contractors have not been paid, despite having completed the projects. Even 1 trillion naira or 1.5 trillion naira that Federal Executive Council has approved has not been paid because now the Minister of Finance and Budget and the Accountant General Office is asking them for 2 certificates, 1 certificate of completion and all of that. And that is also delayed. And that will affect the economy because some of these contractors actually borrowed money from banks and financial institutions to complete this project on behalf of federal government. So President Bola Tinubu needs to bring down the neck of his Minister of Finance. I know it's an inherited problem for Mr. Taiwo Oyedele. It's an inherited problem because I remember the National Assembly actually called Wale Edu and Doris Udoka, who was then Minister of State for Finance, around November, December last year, to ask them why has that not been capital release of ministries, departments, and agencies, and they just gave one flimsy excuse or the other. But now,
we're totally out of time. My apologies, totally out of time. But I think you laid out your points very brilliantly. We'll continue to check in on these things to make sure that the democratic space is available, accessible, and affordable as much as possible for as many people as are interested in these spaces. And so we can marry that with governance in terms of spending, as has been raised. Mr. Jide Ojo is a political and public affairs analyst joining us virtually. Thank you, sir, for coming through as always. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Do have a great day ahead.
Well, the inflation eased marginally the numbers. So let's talk about it, use that to build on the state of the economy. Stay with us.
When it concerns Nigeria's economy, then it concerns you and I. Nigeria's inflation stood at 15.91%, just dropping slightly from 15.93%. Let's get to explore all of this with Professor Lawal Babatunde. He's a professor of economics, and he joins us live on the program. Professor of economics, professor of accounting, rather, I should say, and finance, Macpherson University. He's also the director of academic planning, Macpherson University. Thank you indeed, Professor Babatunde, for agreeing to talk to us here on the program. If you look at some of that details around the numbers released yesterday by the CBN, the core inflation cooled as well, 15.92%, but where it bites for the average Nigerian is the food inflation, still climbing at to 17.52%. My first question to you as a professional is, do you even believe these numbers?
Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for having me on your show. Obviously, in the issue of this inflation rate, I believe in the numbers because this statistics was released by the National Bureau of Statistics. Of course, the shift from 15.91% in June as of 15.75 in that of May shows that there is a decline in the inflation rate. And what does that suggest? That suggests that as inflation rate decreases, it doesn't necessarily mean that price of items will decrease. For instance, I'll give you an example. For instance, if a bag of rice rise from 60,000 to 90,000 naira, when there is decline in inflation rate, it does not necessarily mean that the price will definitely fall. We are only saying that the reduction in that price is going to move on slowly as it increases. So inflation has a lot of effect on that. And especially Nigerians, they believe in, we believe in food items such as rice, such as beans, and the likes. Also, if you look at businesses, they also involve themselves in businesses. They incur fuel, they incur other items that are needed in the production of their items. And of course, this plays a major role for them, looking at issue of electricity, looking at issue of good roads for them to move their goods. So all this plays a lot of issues on the inflation rate. And of course, when we say this is there, we are saying that the rate is coming down bit by bit. And an average Nigerian is solely focused on what will better the issue of food items in Nigeria. I can't imagine some families whereby, as prices of item increases, salary are not increasing. And you will keep worrying yourself that how do you go about it? So it's a serious issue. And I think the inflation rate is showing that we are moving there gradually. And of course, to show that a time will come whereby Nigeria will enjoy sort of relief from this inflation rate.
So let's get you correctly, Prof. Are you saying that the latest inflation rate does indeed reflect the current economic realities? And I'd like to be clear on what I mean by that. We've had, a significant increase in the pump price of petrol since February, when the conflict in the Middle East began, with only a very insignificant moderation in the last week or so. So are you saying that this current inflation, which is the second, by the way, after the conflict in Iran, does it reflect the current economic reality?
Of course, yes. It reflects the current economic reality, because if you look at the issue of fuel prices from February, it has been going up and down, because inflation simply means a persistent and sustained increase in the general price level. So you see that every time there is rise and fall in the issue of petrol, especially the PMS, and it has really affected the performance or the output of Nigerians in the consumption of using this PMS. And also, if you in line with the inflation rate, I'm saying that it aligns, because price of items are beginning to drop bit by bit. But what I'm only saying is that items that are there will not necessarily mean that because there is a decline in inflation rate, it does not necessarily mean that everything will fall as it is. It will reduce bit by bit, and these items will continue to rise. So the economic situation that happened between Iran and the world shows that the decline in the inflation rate will help in improving food items basically in Nigeria, and Nigerians will be able to afford few things as it is. In fact, while I was in Abuja for a training, I saw a lot of people who were trekking from their offices from their homes to their offices, and I was wondering what could be the cost. People cannot even afford good transportation system. People cannot even afford to get money to transport themselves to their offices. So the inflation rate is significant, and it has helped in cushioning the effect of food items in Nigeria.
Are you saying that between February and June, when February we're buying petrol for about between 750 and 800 naira per liter, and now we're buying for 1,200 naira per liter, that inflation rate could only have come down by about 1% if you considered what inflation was in May, and now when analysts said that it would only be practical to begin to reflect the realities from February when the conflict in Iran began. So are you saying that inflation could only have reduced by about 1%?
I'm not saying that I expect it to have gone further than that, but besides, this is a national. It is not a national issue. It is not an issue within Nigeria. It is an issue outside, because Nigeria solely, thank God for Dangote refinery that is there, that is working. The issue that happened between Iran and US played a major factor in the rise of PMS. Basically, when we're buying at 750, 800, it was better off. But now we are buying at 1,200, and now we are hoping that it will get better, because as of now, fuel is selling for around 1,000, 120 or 1,000, depending on the location that it is. So the inflation rate that has reduced by 1% is to show that we are progressing, and definitely bit by bit we're going to get there, because we are not considering just the local factors that affect the oil sector. We are only looking at other factors that affect them, and basically the 1% is just to show that Nigeria is progressing in terms of inflation rate, and I know before the end of the year, the inflation rate will also reduce.
So, Prof, let's do some further interrogation on the inflation numbers before we move on to other subjects within the time we have. So, for the purpose of education, there are close to 1,000 items in the basket, classified into 13 divisions within COICOP. The greatest and the highest weightage is food, which was reduced from about 51 to 40 because it was redistributed in terms of the rebasing that was done, and the weighted year and the base year. So I needed to clear that. But if you look at the inflation numbers, headline inflation from January to June, which is 6 months, it still stayed around 15%, oscillating marginally, whether it's 15.0 or 15.91, 15.93 as reported. But as of January, if my data is right, food inflation stood at about 8%. That was the first time we had, or one of the first times we had single digit in terms of inflation, food inflation. But as we speak, I think the latest release has food inflation jumping by 100%, so about maybe 17% right now. So how come food inflation is increasing? We can argue astronomically, because in 6 months it has gone almost 100%, while the headline inflation stays.
Okay, thank you very much. You see, when it comes to the issue of food items, basically Nigeria, what we believe majorly is on food items, because everybody loves to do this. You see, this has played a major role, because from 8% that you said in January, and it has increased by almost 100% to show that there is an increase in that. Basically, price of items are very expensive. Like I said, if you go to the market now, you see the price of items that are there. Even to buy flour, to buy yam, to buy rice, it's a bit expensive. Even a basket of tomatoes are also expensive. So we are saying that the government should be able to look into this area so that it can cushion the effect of the citizens, so that it can be able to afford good life, eat good food, and be able to purchase these items. Food is very, very necessary for everybody, because if you look at the price of rice, now like the example I gave the other time, if price of rice rises from 60,000 to 90,000, for instance, how do you think that will affect an average worker in Nigeria, knowing that the minimum wage is 77? So the thing is that the government should ensure that the price of food items are reduced and are considered. Also, the cost of transportation is also one of the factors that affects this issue of food. Again, look at how do we move these items. We have the producers of these items from the north, from the east, they are there, but the problem of transportation is an issue. If you ask an average Nigerian or somebody who is selling pepper, or if somebody who is selling tomatoes, you will ask that how much, what is the factor that has caused this rise in the price of this item? It will tell you that, oh, didn't you know what is happening in Nigeria? The rise of fuel. So it has really affected a lot of the businesses, and that is why you see people finding it difficult to be able to survive and cope. So the point is that there should be more room government should create more room for Nigerians, especially the citizens, to be able to afford food, which is the main source of life of sustenance for everyone in Nigeria.
If I may come in, Prof, yes. So I want you to be a bit more academic with my question so that people can understand. So the biggest cost component of the average household, we will argue, could be food first, maybe transportation and accommodation, and then others. So my question actually is, if food has the highest weightage and is one of the biggest drivers of inflation that impacts on headline inflation, and food has gone from 8% in January to, say, 16 to 17% in June, yet the headline stays at 15%. How do you explain that as a scholar?
Okay, thank you very much. That is just to talk about the variance or the issues that are there. Basically, if there is the rise from the increase in the percentage of inflation rate for food from 8% to 16%, now it's still standing at 50.1. What we are seeing is that there is just a marginal variance or difference between the actual figure that is supposed to be. Because if you look at it, 8% to 16% to now standing at 15.91 is just marginal. If you look at the difference, it's just 0.9. So what we are saying here is that it is still very, very high on the high side because food items are very, very necessary. There is no market you go to today that you won't see people involving in these food items. Okay, so the percentage that is there is just showing a variance between the actual, which is supposed to be 16% of double, which has been 100%, or the 15.9 as reported by statistics. Basically, go to market. In fact, in Abuja, I went to one of the market there around Asokoro. I was able to see things, and I was asking myself, how do we get to this level? It is very, very difficult for people to sustain. So the price of items have gone high. They have skyrocketed. And it has caused a lot of problems. People cannot even feed well on this issue. So I feel that the price of fuel, the price of food item is a basic necessity, and the variance between the actual and the reported figure by the National Bureau of Statistics is just to show that we are not there yet, and we'll definitely get there on items of food.
Professor Babatunde, maybe let's bring this conversation a bit more to an area that you are familiar with, which has to do with taxation. Maybe just very briefly, in 30 seconds or less. It's been biting hard for many Nigerians, but the government seems to believe that, you know what, it is good that we do this so that we can shore up the economy. Maybe in 30 seconds or less, speak to this heavy burden of taxation.
Okay, thank you very much. Taxation is a very key area that the government is really involved in because it brings more revenue for the government. You see, the issue of taxation is to show that government wants the best for the citizens, because from the tax that have been generated or remitted to the Nigerian Revenue Service and the State Revenue Service, they are there to cushion the effects and to be able to provide for the amenities that are needed by citizens. So when taxes are being paid or are being requested by the government, it is to ensure that these taxes are properly used for developing the nation. So when government requests for tax, either through company income tax or value-added tax or personal income tax and the likes, they are meant to be used for the infrastructure that will help the citizens as a whole. So government is saying that when you pay your tax, we'll be able to use your tax, the tax generated from you, to be able to provide facilities for the citizens.
Well, let's leave it here. Professor Lawal Babatunde is Professor of Accounting and Finance, Director of Academic Planning, McPherson University. Thank you indeed for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
Whether or not those taxes indeed reflects on the tables and lives of Nigerians remains a question that remains on the minds of many Nigerians who live here. But let's take a moment now. When we come back, we'll turn the spotlights to party politics, this time from the lens of the opposition. We're back in just a moment. Please stay with us.
Welcome back, and so let's transit from the economy to party politics now and look at the state of health of opposition politics with particular focus on the African Democratic Congress and how they're positioned or not, as the case may be, to participate effectively in the coming general elections in 2027. And joining us on the program now is ADC Chieftain and, of course, the campaign director general for the Atiku campaign organization. Of course, he wears many hats. He's also a legal practitioner. Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo joins us from our Abuja studio this morning. Mr. Okonkwo, good morning, sir. It's good to see you. Welcome to the Morning Brief.
Good morning, Morning Brief, and thank you, viewers, and good morning to Nigerians for joining us.
And so, I'd like you to do a layout.
No, if you would, I'm sorry to intervene and interfere. I am a spokesperson for His Excellency Atiku Abubakar. I am not the campaign DG for the ADC.
Thank you for the correction. The two look similar anyway. So he's a spokesperson for the Atiku presidency. Thank you for coming on the program. I'd like you to do a layout for us because it can be confusing. There is the appeal court reserving ruling on the deregistration of the ADC after parties adopted their briefs. There's also a ruling, I believe, ordering the deregistration of the party. And there's also the nephew Bala Gombe. And, you know, these litigations, make the ADC's participation ominous ahead of 2027. Do a layout for us on the state of these cases and before we, enter the conversation fully.
All right. The first thing I want to say is that the judge of a federal high court, Justice Liman, has laid it to rest that the David Mark-led executive leadership of ADC is duly elected. And so the position of the court now is that David Mark-led leadership is authentic and they are the ones in charge of ADC. That's settled. In the issue of the current ruling or judgment of the Court of Appeal, the issue that was decided was who has the power to conduct the state congresses. It has nothing to do with the leadership of David Mark. In other words, the leadership of the ADC. It has nothing to do with the primaries conducted by ADC. It was just decided based on who has the authority to conduct the state congresses. State congresses produce the state executive council. In other words, the leadership in the sub-unit, sub-head, in the internal organ of a political party. And as you may have understood, the majority judgment of the Court of Appeal said that the State Executive Council has the power to organize the State Congress, while the minority judgment stated the law as it is, in my own opinion, that the courts do not have jurisdiction whatsoever to interfere in the internal affairs of political parties. And the minority judgment actually stated the law as written in section 83 subsection 5 of the Electoral Act 2026 that made it clear that the courts do not have jurisdiction to entertain any matter that borders on internal affairs of a political party. Now, look at it as simple as it is. The issue of state executive council is even internal in itself, because as you can see, they don't even have the right by law to relate with INEC. The section 82, subsection 1 of the Electoral Act 2026, you know what it said? It's very clear. It said, the party shall give to the commission at least 21 days notice for any convention, conference, congress on the line, meeting, convened for the purpose of electing the governing bodies of political parties, electing the executive committees, or nominating the candidates of political parties or merger. So it is the party that has the right to relate with INEC on any issue that has to do with electing its officials. Look at subsection 2 of that section 82. It said that the party in that notice must indicate the time, venue, date, and names of the members of the committee, names of the members of the conference, convention, or congress committee that will organize the election in accordance with the party's constitution. So you see, even Electoral Act recognizes that it is the committee set up by the party that organizes state congresses, not the state executive council. It will be ridiculous. As a matter of fact, a court saying that the state executive council will organize the election that brings itself to power is against natural justice, equity, and good conscience. Natural justice forbids you to be a judge in your own cause. How can Tinubu, for instance, organize the election that brings Tinubu to power? It is really laughable. So I'm sorry to say that that judgment reflects what the Court of Appeal said recently: judicial rascality, judicial impertinence. Judicial rascality is a situation where courts or judges act recklessly, act very, very unethically and capriciously to circumvent the law. It is a situation where the legal process is manipulated to serve ulterior or political motive rather than uphold justice. So you can see that by the letters of the law, justice is not being maintained by the courts when it has to do with opposition. Supreme Court has made it clear that you do not interfere in the internal affairs of political party. And when you do it, Supreme Court says it's judicial impertinence. Judicial impertinence is a situation whereby a lower court brazenly disregards the order, the authority, the hierarchy of an appellate court. The appellate court has made it clear. So why would lower courts be ruling otherwise? That's judicial rascality. That's judicial impertinence. And we have to stop it. I want to plead that the judiciary should not lend itself to be used by the ruling party APC to litigate the opposition parties out of existence. That is what is going on. Nothing else. We don't have any problem here.
Mr. Okonkwo, let's stay with the party. So, besides the comments around the judiciary, which you're a member of the judiciary as a member of the bar as well. So the argument will always be, for every case there are uniqueness. You're talking about facts. We're talking about legal questions that has to be adjudicated over. We're talking about the legal or judicial reasoning of the justices or the judges in this case. So sometimes the cases may be different, the merits may be different, and all of the argument that they put forward. But I think the Electoral Act is quite clear on how far the court can go, and the judges have also found a way to come into internal affairs of party. That debate is still ongoing across board, and we hope we can find a resolution once and for all on that particular matter. But let's stay with your party for a moment. Two questions. One is directed to you. One is, I have just looked at the page, Twitter handle or X handle of Rotimi Amechi, the former governor of Rivers State, former minister. I haven't seen anything about his page that shows that he is the vice presidential candidate of the party. So I know there was just back and forth. So first and foremost, Has ADC been able to upload all its candidates, presidential, everything to INEC portal? That's the first question, because there were issues around whether Nafiu Gombe had access or not. And I think Bolaji Abdullahi clarified that. So first, has ADC been able to upload? And do you think that the vice presidential candidate of the party is as excited as he should be in carrying the party, just like other vice presidential candidates are carrying to prosecute this election? And then, in addition, I remember you were very unhappy when he was chosen as a vice presidential candidate because you felt that this is indeed Boston to at least have some seat on the table. Because you're very vocal when you're not happy about things. But later you were appointed as spokesperson, and it looks like you were also happy. So help us balance all of this.
All right. So specifically, I want to tell you that ADC has uploaded all its candidates in accordance with the law, in accordance with the guidelines stipulated by INEC. ADC is one. And we want to use this opportunity to deprecate false information and propaganda which APC and their loyalists and their moles in all the opposition parties always proclaim to put uncertainty in the hearts of Nigerians. We have uploaded all our candidates, starting from His Excellency Atiku Abubakar as the presidential candidate of ADC, down to all our members. So we are clean. Any other purported upload by any purported human being called Nafiu Bala is fake, false, and fabricated and should be disregarded. INEC has made comments about that, and it is settled. The police should be investigating false information by now if we were in a saner society. Having said that, the ADC has also announced Rotimi Amechi as the vice presidential candidate of ADC. And in our own nature, the way we do things, whenever such issue arises, and there are sections in our party that are saying things or registering some reservations, we always go internally to negotiate, to dialogue democratically so that we can reach compromise and come back together as one to move on. So what is happening now is that negotiations are going on, dialogue is going on to suit all the nerves, to calm all the nerves, to sort out grievances, to sort out reservations that anybody may have. And then we will move on together as one. Rotimi Amechi is the vice presidential candidate to His Excellency Atiku Abubakar. Coming to your own question as to myself, let me correct something that you said. There was no place in what I wrote that I mentioned His Excellency Rotimi Amechi. There is no place that I said that I am against his choice as a person. I said I would have favorably been disposed by the choice to have come from southeast, not south-south, because southeast has not produced the president or vice from 1999. The name Amechi is Igbo, so I couldn't have been saying Ndi Igbo because his name is also Igbo, and culturally is from an ethnic nationality that even the president of Ohanese comes from his own nationality in Nigeria of today. So it has nothing to do with Igbo or not Igbo. I was talking about geopolitical balancing. But you know, we had some peculiarities before the election where people indicated their interest to contest for the presidency. And the person that represented the southeast in that calculation left unceremoniously before the conclusion of the process. That left southeast disadvantaged and confused. And then immediately P2B exited. It was as if that position that would have been given to southeast was vacant. And so within within the limitation that we had of the Electoral Act that forbids you from picking anybody outside the political party who was not a member 21 days to the primary. Some beautiful names were tropped up. You talked about Abaribe. You talked about Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. You talked about some nice names. But those names, they were no longer members of ADC. So the Southeast was now disadvantaged and thrown into confusion, and there was a lacuna. That was why the Excellency Atiku Abubakar still went to the nearest person that is closest to the Southeast. In other words, for you to know that he has nothing against the Igbo people. And then, when that choice was made, efforts were also made to explain out the reasons why such a choice would be made. And when I was convinced from all the available data and information, it was a nice thing. The spokesperson I was willing to give up for the interest of Ndibo. But when everything was now stated very well, and the interest of Ndibo and Southeast was now recognized and guaranteed, then it was a go-go for me. And we are now one big and happy family. ADC is going to form the next government of Nigeria, and Atiku Abubakar will be the next president of the Federal Republic of Nigeria by the grace of God.
Mr. Konkwa, it's amazing how you've laid your arguments. If that happens, it means that we'll have a northerner become president for perhaps the next 8 years, because in this part of the world, when you become president or governor, you want to do 2 terms. So I'm wondering the conviction that you have to support such a candidacy, especially because you are an Igbo man. So I'm wondering where that conviction is coming from. 2, the party, ABGA, I know you're not a member of ABGA, but ABGA has also adopted President Bola Tinubu as its official candidate as well to support the presidency of President Bola Tinubu, or the candidacy of President Bola Tinubu. So in my head, and if you do that calculation, it looks like in the next 8 years to 12 years, we will not have any Igbo man become president if that happens. So does it also paint a picture of how those in the Southeast are willing to play the politicking of Nigeria? Does it also paint the picture of perhaps maybe the Southeast does not understand how the politicking works? Because one would have thought, and there are those who even think that you perhaps should have followed your heart and follow perhaps Mr. Peter Obi to the NDC.
All right. Now, let's put it this way. I was just thinking that you were talking about the calamity that will befall the Southeast if they ever vote for APC. Because presently, APC has Muslim ticket. We are almost 100% Christians, about 99.9%. Now, if APC ever comes to power, automatically in the next 4 years, there is nobody from the Southeast. There is no Igbo person that will be president or vice. And Tinubu, from his utter hatred for Ndibo, certainly in 2031, he may not support any Igbo person to be the vice presidential candidate of APC. So automatically in the next 12 years, there will be no Igbo person, most probably, that will be president or vice under APC. And most probably, you don't know how Tinubu behaves. He has shown himself as a religious bigot, because for 8 years he wants to foist a same-faith ticket, which even the Muslim ulama from the north has deprecated and has described as an abomination, a haram, because they understand that in a multi-religious society, there is a need for religious balancing. So that kills APC for any average Igbo man, for anybody from the Southeast. Now, let's talk about this option. Recall that in 2022-23, there might not be any Igbo man that fought like I did to ensure that an Igbo man became president. We believe that we won. But after that, it was taken away from us. And we couldn't do anything because we did not have the power of the army, police, or air force, no governmental power. And we did not have even the force that could make us to change the system without still going through the normal process of judicial process, which turned out the way it turned out. In 2027, you can't do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result. In 2027, Tinubu is now an incumbent. He was not an incumbent in 2022, 2023. And he was able to grab the power, to snatch it, to run away with it. And now he is the commander-in-chief. And I am telling you that no politician that has any sense of reason will think that you will go alone to confront an incumbent that has the power of the state, who have said it clearly that I will snatch power, I will grab it, I will run away with it. So I said that all the political leaders, all the political parties, all the opposition leaders should come together in a coalition. And when they come together in a coalition, they should submit themselves to the primary, because the opposition does not have the luxury of giving free ticket or choosing anybody. You have to choose somebody that every sector of Nigeria accepts. And I said, when they come together, they will go into primary. Whoever wins, I will support. And the opposition leaders, everybody, including Peter Obi, including Kwakwanso, including Atiku Abubakar, including Rotimi Amechi, all of them, they came together and made a choice of ADC. So ADC, as 2027 is concerned, is not a party for the North, for the South, for the East or West. It is the party for Nigeria and Nigerians that the whole opposition leaders came together to adopt. And that party chose Atiku Abubakar. And that was a very strategic choice, because recall that when Yaradua died and Goodluck Jonathan came in 2011, the North were not allowed to do their 8 years, because they say a supervening factor that has happened, which made Jonathan to become president. 2011 was to be for the Northerners to do their 8 years. It was truncated. So rotation is between North and South, 4-year term of a president. The president does not have 8 years term. Now, the second term for an incumbent president is a referendum on his performance. It is obvious that Tinubu has failed and wants to drag Nigeria into destruction. So we are talking about survival now. We're not talking about zoning, since rotation has been achieved. And no one zone, no one geopolitical zone, no one section of the country can defeat an incumbent without the support of everybody. So ADC provided that option, and ADC went into primary and produced Atiku Abubakar. And I made it clear before that time that whoever the opposition brings, I will support. And thank goodness it has pleased His Excellency Atiku Abubakar to make me his spokesperson. So I am a spokesperson for the opposition coalition, opposition leaders, opposition parties. And that is why I am telling Nigerians that Atiku Abubakar is a man that has played on the national scene, that has built bridges across the 6 geopolitical zones. And he will bring to bear his intelligence, his experience in economy, in security, in all the aspects of Nigerian life, which he did as a vice president, which he did with Obasanjo. And we had the best economy and best security then. And this is the only man that has had that national experience amongst the people that wants to contest. All the other people had just become governors in their own tiny space.
So
and you can see what Tinubu is doing.
In your commentary,
just choosing people from Lagos and all those things. Rotimi Amechi has been the speaker of the House. If
I may come in there, if you can hear me, Mr. Konko, pardon me if I may come in there. I'm not quite sure that you're, taking your commentary in the direction of the question of my colleague Kelly, and some would say you're only just doing your job as a spokesman of Mr. Atiku, by selling his candidacy. You said earlier that.
Do you remember?
Hold on, pardon me. Yeah, he was talking about Igbo. His question was in the direction of the Igbo the need for an Igbo presidency, which I'm about to follow up on. But I just want to mention a few things in line with your commentary. You talked about the president's hatred
you asked
for
the
the
question
Igbos.
very well.
Pardon me, hold on. Hold on, Mr.
Amechi
Okonkwo.
is Igbo. Amechi is already Igbo. And he is going to be the vice president in 2027.
Some would argue against that. And you did a layout that Mr. Amechi is from the south, not from the southeast. But some would say that
I want him to correct
your
it.
submission.
That's why I want him to correct his question.
Hold on, Mr. Okonkwo.
Southeast, not Igbo.
Mr. Okonkwo, some would say your submission that Mr. President has a hatred for the Igbo is wrong. Because recall that when Mr. President was governor of Lagos State, he's the first, perhaps in the history of Nigeria, to appoint a non-Yoruba into his cabinet as commissioner who was retained over a period of time in the Lagos State cabinet. That's on the one hand. So that could puncture your argument that he has a hatred for the Igbo. So you also talked about, what could have been concluded in the Yar'Adua presidency, but for his death, which, for convenience, President Jonathan had to continue. We've had 2015 to 2023, a northern presidency. So another argument that could puncture yours is that it's only trite for the South to complete another 4-year tenure after the first 4 years of President Tinubu. But let's now do a narrowing further on the need for the Igbo presidency. Despite your argument, one cannot ignore the fact that the Southeast is fractured. My colleague mentioned earlier APGA endorsing the president for 2027. And besides that, all the other Southeastern states are now APC. And you going against the NDC presidential candidate, Mr. Peter Obi, in what many consider a very surprising turn of events, further fractures the Southeast and makes it ominous for the Southeast to ever achieve that age-long aspiration to be, taste power in the political trajectory of Nigeria. And some would ask why your how do I put it now? Why your consistent opposition to Mr. Peter Obi?
Well, first and foremost, you have brought too many things together. Yes, Peter Obi is the one who is now working against Igbo presidency and vice presidency because he came to ADC on his own. And he said he was going to contest under ADC. And he left about just 1 week to the close of time. So you cannot say, I am the one working towards Igbo presidency. And because of the fact that I could not see even that was why I said I am not going to even campaign until I am sure of that path to Igbo presidency. But I would prefer us to be using Southeast rather than Igbo. Because you have Igbo in South-South, you have Igbo in the North, and you have the Igbo predominantly in the Southeast. And as I keep saying, I'm talking about geopolitical balancing. So let us make that point. Because Amechi, for instance, is Igbo. And he's already the vice presidential candidate. And that is why I'm saying that is what makes me to even become more favorably disposed that ADC is the shortest path to Igbo presidency. Now, when you talk about Enotena doing 8 years, sorry, let me correct this. Buhari did 8 years to equal the 8 years done by Obasanjo, not to provide any avenue for the 8 years of another Southerner. Because like I told you, the 8 years of the North was truncated. And it was not because of death. Death made Jonathan vice president to complete the tenure of Yar'Adua. So the tenure would have ended in 2011, where the North would have been allowed to finish their 8 years. But they were not allowed to finish 8 years. I am very surprised that people want to make it appear as if it is the Northerners that started this issue of not allowing one side to complete their 8 years. 2011, the whole North came together, and 4 of them contested from the North: Buhari, Gusau, Saraki, and Atiku. And the North brought out Atiku to complete the 8 years of the North. Yet, they refused, and they used the incumbency of Jonathan to compel the power to shift to the south without not completing their 8 years. So when you talk about the issue, Atiku is the person that was disadvantaged and was the person that had the first injustice against truncating the section of a country from completing their 8 years, because the entire North brought Atiku to represent them. And yet, the incumbent power of Jonathan stopped it. So the issue is that, sorry, Buhari completed the 8 years that Obasanjo did. Now that we are in this situation, where Tinubu has done 4 years, let me tell you, if you bring another person from the south, the North will be very reluctant to vote for the person. As one interviewer said, he said because the North will believe that that person will do 8 years, meaning the power will stay 12 years in the south. So anytime you want to make a disruptive change, you must have to use somebody from the other sector and get an agreement with the person to do 4 years so that it will not be shared for 4 years. But the most important thing is that Nigerians are talking about survival now, not zoning. Tinubu has brought us to our knees that we are trying to survive as a nation. Look at the insecurity.
You have brought a new argument into the zoning conversation, for which you're going to be chewing on for a long time, that the late Muhammadu Buhari completed the 8 years of Obasanjo. Well, I really don't understand that, but it's a conversation that continues. Pardon me, we must anchor at this point. Thank you so much for coming on the program. Mr. Kenneth Okonkwo is an ADC chieftain, legal practitioner, and of course spokesperson for Mr. Atiku Abubakar, the presidential candidate of the ADC. Thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Well, quite a lot to explore on that conversation. I wonder if we have time for trends.
No, we don't.
Today. We're totally out of time.
Totally out of time.
Thank you so much for being there. We're back again tomorrow. I am Bukola Koka.
I'm Kelly Egiga. You'd imagine that the politicking and calculation of politicking will continue in this country. That's it, everyone. Bye now.
Two things matter in politics: numbers and who can win. Make of it what you want. I'm Jeffrey Uzama. Bye-bye.